Hey everyone, I am Maddie Wessel and I'm here today on behalf of my Women and Gender Studies class that I am taking this semester in college. I go to the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, and throughout the semester we talked about various different topics in Women and Gender Studies, but one of them that really resonated with me was when we talked about rape and rape culture. So today I'm just going to do a little talking about rape and rape culture. I know it's not something that people really like to talk about or feel comfortable talking about, but with that being said, it is something that does need to be talked about. So first, let's just get the definition of rape out of the way. Rape by definition is a type of sexual assault usually involving sexual intercourse or other forms of sexual penetration against a person without their consent. I have come to the realization that a lot of people don't fully understand what consent is, so I'm going to give a definition of that as well. Consent is the agreement between both parties to engage in sexual activity. If he or she says yes, there is consent. If he or she says no, there is not consent. However, if one or both people in the party are drunk, there is no consent that can be given whatsoever. So none, zero, period, done, end of story. Okay, so moving on to rape culture. Rape culture, as described by an article that I found online on this website called Law Street Media. The title of the article is called Rape Culture and the Concept of Affirmative Consent. It says that rape culture refers to a culture in which sexuality and violence are linked together and are normalized. It says that male sexuality is based on the use of violence against women to subdue them to take a sexual experience. Rape culture tends to overgeneralize gender roles and sexuality. It promotes the idea to men that their only healthy sexuality is to be a predator. It considers women as objects without any positive sexuality. Believe it or not, a lot of people think that rape culture does not exist or that it is not real, but it for sure is real in our society. In another article I read called Rape Culture is Real, this was published in Times Magazine. The most common question that is asked when someone is raped or sexually assaulted is, what were you wearing? Like, excuse me, what was I wearing? How about, am I okay? How am I doing? In the article by Zerlina Maxwell, who's the author, she said that her motives were questioned more than her rapist's motives and actions were questioned. Like, that is so completely wrong. Like, the first thing that we do is ask her how much she was drinking, what she was wearing, to make it sound like it was her fault. The reason why she got targeted, why she got attacked, was her fault. And that's where the phrase "she was asking for it" really comes into play. But what girl does ask for rape? People in the United States are very ignorant to the fact that 1 in 5 American women have survived attempted rape. Just not a lot of them go through with going forward and telling the authorities or going forward and pressing charges because they are scared. 1 in 6 men are abused before the age of 18. Why are we normalizing this? So many people downplay rape culture or downplay rape, or they just don't want to talk about it out of fear. But like Maxwell says, rape culture is a very serious problem, and we do need to talk about it. I personally have never been raped or sexually assaulted, but I do have a friend back home in Iowa, where I'm from, who was raped by her cousin. She lived with her cousin. He lived in their same house, and it happened up until her freshman year of high school. She didn't tell anybody about it. She very much blamed herself, and she really didn't confide in anybody with it until she told me this past summer. She said that she was terrified to tell her dad and that she felt like it was now useless to really do anything about it. She's a junior now. She's a junior now in high school, so she felt like the gap in years made it very hard for her to go forward and talk about it. And she knew that if she told her parents back when it did happen, that she really didn't think that they would believe her. Like, he was her cousin, he lived with them, and he was a very nice guy. So, of course, when she told me this, it broke my heart. Like, I didn't know what to do, so I called my sister, who is a woman in gender studies minor in college in Chicago, and I asked her, like, what do I do? My friend just told me this huge thing. Like, she was raped. How do I comfort her? And so my sister just told me to be there for her, and that I should really just try to convince her to like maybe tell her parents now. If she doesn't want to, she doesn't have to, but she probably can't come forward and try to press any charges or do anything like that, because there has been such a year gap between when it happened. So this experience made me very mad that people like my friends are scared to reach out in fear that they might be looked down upon. Rape culture in history hasn't really changed that much. That's probably the most upsetting thing about all of this. In ancient Babylonian times, this YouTuber, her name's Marina Shut Up, really helped me figure out a lot about the history of rape culture. So in ancient Babylonian times, which was like 4,000 years ago, the first written laws were laid out. And yes, believe it or not, they did discuss rape. If you were a virgin and you were raped, it was considered theft against your dad because, duh, like we know in history, women were property. The rapist was then captured and killed. If you were a married woman, however, regardless of the consent, you were considered an adulteress, and you got to share the punishment with your rapist, because that makes sense. You were then bound and thrown in a river. It's important to realize that, like I said, times really haven't changed. If you're a virgin, like, it is very, like, tragic, of course, and it is kind of acted like a disrespect towards your father. If you're married nowadays, you are kind of partially put in the blame. It could be considered cheating. Marina Shut Up made a very good point when she said that in today's society, if a rape survivor wants to be taken seriously about her rape, then she has to be a respectable woman. Like, we tend to say that if people who sleep around, or people who are promiscuous, or people have multiple sex partners, like if they get raped or assaulted, like they were asking for it. Or we try to make excuses for why them being raped is okay. And that is completely ridiculous. In ancient Hebrews, Hebrew women, again, were held responsible for their own rape. In the 12th century England, King Henry II wrote out similar rules for sexual assault. The survivor, or the person that was raped, once they were done being raped, they had to go in their bloodstained clothes to the neighboring town and like show their injuries to the people in the town. Like, yes, I realize that isn't done today, but if you think about it, like today, after a person is raped, like they are expected to collect all the evidence and go in, and like if they want to press charges or put their attacker behind bars, like they have to come with all this evidence and stuff. Now, these are only two historical pieces of evidence that show that even that far back in history, like, rape culture was very prevalent. There are several others, trust me. I have a hard time being here and feeling like I have to have all the answers. I did go through an experience, but with that being said, like, I still don't know what is like the right thing to do, but I do have some pointers for you guys. First off, don't victim blame. They came to you to not feel judged, and they were probably scared. If anything, don't question their motives. Question the attackers. Second, listen. Let them know that you will always listen, and they can come to you about anything. Third, don't push them. Don't make them tell you if they don't want to. It might have been liberating enough for them to come forward and even talk to somebody about it. Lastly, just be a friend to them. Just be there and be understanding. In a case that I recently read, it was done earlier this year in 2016, and this guy, whose name is like really hard to pronounce, I'm probably gonna butcher it, like Jan Jamoshi, whatever, he raped 5 girls and got off completely scot-free. The girls didn't have apparently enough evidence to convict him. So right there, like, talk about prevalent rape culture. Like, we have 5 girls saying that that guy raped him, and still somehow he gets off scot-free. In that case, that just makes me feel like we just need to stand up and listen. Like, don't normalize this, you guys. Lastly, I have to say, on the WAVAW website, this is a rape crisis center website. There are other examples of how to help those that have been affected. The crisis hotline is on that website, but I also want to put it on the screen in case no one actually ends up going to the website. This is a 24-hour toll-free crisis line. There's counseling, activism, and volunteer work that can be done through this website. So if you want to get involved, you can go ahead and go on this website and figure out ways. I am not much of a person for going on websites and like reading into all this stuff, but it was super helpful and super informational for me. So I would really recommend it if you want to go out and be an activist. Check out your local areas as well for places you can talk freely about your experience or a friend's experience. There are probably several safe places where you can talk about this kind of stuff. My last plea, you guys, is that you stop normalizing rape culture. Just you as a person. Stand up, raise your voice. Like I said, become an activist. You don't have to start a rally. Like, you don't have to do anything super crazy or any of that shit. But, like, this is happening and it needs to stop. But it isn't just happening in the U.S. either. Like, it's happening around the world. People in the Middle East are experiencing rape culture as well. Like, they have prevalent rape culture as well. So definitely think about that as well if you want to get involved internationally and stuff. So thanks for listening. Like, subscribe, or comment if you want. You don't have to. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. But thanks for listening, you guys.